Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Neil Vora, and I'm excited to be here this afternoon to talk through finance transformations. And before I take everyone through this slide, over the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be covering 4 or 5 key topics. The first topic is we want to give everyone just an overview to try to make it real for everyone on what a day in the life would actually look like, or actually looks like for a modern finance professional as a first topic. The second topic is more around the concept of finance transformations and actually what that means for a lot of organizations, as many organizations are facing so many challenges. The third topic we'll talk through is, so after you know more about a finance transformation, what are CFOs looking for when it comes to improving their finance organizations? And more specifically, what are they looking for when it comes to really strong finance leaders in the future as well? And the fourth topic is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's where Adam comes in as well, is we'll be doing a demo on some ways that we can think about using reporting or getting to reporting and analytics, modern ways of using reporting, which is what we're doing today at TD as well. And then we'll wrap it up and we'll talk through what all of this means for you. It's the so what to this discussion in terms of how the next generation of finance can be thinking about a career in finance in the future as well, based on all the changes that are happening today. So on that note, we want to kick it off for a few minutes and just talk through a day in the life of a finance professional. Actually, a day in the life of a modern finance professional. So there's a really long example here, but I'll take you through a couple of the quick bullets. So imagine a new finance director. She just got promoted in her job. First thing Monday morning, she gets pinged by an avatar or a digital worker who's her assistant to say, we have the overnight profitability reports in from our large multinational organizations. So India's operations and Seoul's operations, we have your profitability reports in. And that avatar tells her what she should be looking at first thing in the morning to focus on certain areas throughout the rest of her day. So it's now 9:30 in the morning. And through the avatar or the digital worker, she got her report and she got an item of what she should be focusing on. She jumps on a call with India and with her team in Korea as well. And she's got the dashboards that you see on the bottom left-hand corner. Reality is the purpose of those dashboards is that she already has that ready and available in her in her hands or on her computer, where she doesn't need to spend 2 hours on a Monday morning pulling it together herself. She had it available and she can actually take that information and have a meaningful discussion on the fly with her counterparts that are 12 hours ahead, right? So think about a multinational organization. You have information available to you. And by the way, you'll see the little quote on the bottom left-hand side. Information is the most valuable commodity. Stole that line from Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. If you guys haven't seen that movie, you should watch it. It helps you realize how important information is and real-time information is in a lot of our jobs today as well. So it's midday and the director of finance is talking to her team offshore, 12 hours ahead, and they're talking about a new investment that they want to make in the operations on a technology solution. And she's thinking through how does she hire the right type of skills in finance to implement this technology solution so she can make her business a lot more efficient. And she's also thinking to herself at like 11 a.m., how cool is it that she's actually talking to someone 12 hours ahead or 12 hours away, and it's all virtual. You don't have to be in the office. You're all connected always. So mid-afternoon around 2:30, her digital worker, the avatar, informs the director of finance that one of the competitors is just, there's some negative information out there about one of the competitors for our company, and the market value of that company is starting to dip based on what's happening in the markets real time. So quickly, the director of finance is thinking, what do I do with that information? How do I take that, what's happening to my competitor, and make sure that the market value of my company is not going to get impacted? So around 3 o'clock, she gets a meeting invite from her head of sales, where she's got to meet with the head of sales at 4:30, and she's got an hour and a half to put together some sort of analysis to say, based on what happened to our competitor, how do I crunch through some data and pull together a presentation for 4:30? So when you think about information that's already out there, and she tags on her team and says, I need the right folks that can do some advanced analytics and some quick data modeling based on what's happening out there in the market right now, and tell me what that means for our organization in terms of our sales projections. Her team quickly puts it together because they got the skills. When you think about the skills, we're talking about how do you actually do data engineering, or take data and blend data together based on what's happening in the markets, based on our sales forecast, internal data, pull it together into a form of dashboard or presentation. So at 4:30 p.m., she can have a meaningful conversation with the SVP of sales. And the most important point here is finance, the finance function, when you're a finance professional, you add a lot of value by taking information and giving advice on that information. So she's able to quickly take something that happened in midday, get her team to blend the data, put it together in a presentation so she can actually take that and give advice to the SVP of sales and say, here's what we need to focus on to drive value as part of our organization. And by 6 p.m., she's exhausted. So guys, I think what's important through this example is really there's 4 themes that you're going to hear about when it comes to modern finance and finance transformations over the next 30 minutes. Number 1 is there's this concept of digital workers, and it's real. It's not just a term anymore. It's actually real. It's real. We use it today here at TD, where we have automation. It's not a digital worker or robot per se, but it's the concept of using automation and engineering tasks to get us information more real time. The second theme is information is the most valuable commodity, and how you present that information is extremely important. You shouldn't be taking hours to put that information together. The ability to put together a dashboard using modern tools is really important. The third theme is understand the basics of finance, how to do a balance sheet, how to do a P&L, and some of the accounting piece. And then taking that one step further and learning how to take data and using advanced analytics and taking that data and blending it with other types of data to give that information to somebody so they can make a decision. So I call that the next generation of finance capabilities that we should all be thinking about. It's all around data, data, data. And the last piece, the last theme here, you can't really tell from the diagram on the bottom right, but it's about collaboration, right? Focusing on working like in a global virtual environment. You're going to be talking to people across the world. You'll be talking to folks throughout major cities in North America, and like we're here today. You know, although we're like this because of COVID, but this is really important to just sharpen up communication skills and get used to working in a virtual environment across the world. So it's all about collaboration. Hopefully that resonates in terms of a day in the life of a finance professional. And we'll move on to the second topic. So I don't have to share the screen here now, but I don't know, Adam, if you can stop sharing the screen. The second topic we want to chat through was, what do we mean by finance transformations? It's a loaded term, and then before I give you a textbook definition on what a finance transformation is, I think it's important to understand issues or challenges that many organizations are facing today, faced historically, and will face 15 to 20 years out. A lot of the problems that many CFOs are having in any organization is that data that we use in finance is just really messy across the board. How do you take a lot of data, and we call it big data, and how do you make sense of it? So the first problem is just you have thousands of finance professionals that are working with messy data. It's really unstructured. And how do you take that to actually report on right numbers? That's one problem that many organizations are solving. Another problem that many organizations are solving is, especially in finance, technology that finance used back in the day, it's aged significantly. We're talking about like big clunky technology, big like systems and old ledgers, and people in finance can't make use of it today. They need to modernize a lot of the finance systems to take that messy data, get information faster, and give advice to other areas of the business. So a second big problem is just technology is getting really old. A third problem is finance has always been known historically to be the folks that crunch numbers. Run a report for me and I got it from here. Finance really needs to step up the game. A lot of CFOs are saying, I don't want to hire expensive resources, expensive CAs for six-figure salaries to just run a report for me. I want my finance organization to be thought leaders. I want them to be advisors for the rest of the business to say, here's how you should be thinking about getting more customers. Here's the right data that you should be looking at and the sales patterns you should be looking through. So it's more of a problem where finance has that historical trend or historical sort of pattern to say we're just running reports, and we're not really looked at to be advisors. And many CFOs are saying that's not right. Our finance folks have to be advisors. So when you think about the three problems, messy data, old technology, and having expensive people just running reports, how do you solve those problems? That's where a finance transformation comes into play, right? So a finance transformation is essentially like any organization that wants to have a strategy towards a better, faster, and a leaner finance organization. They bring together, they make a change around four dimensions or four things. You either change your processes in finance, you change the way you look at your technology in finance, you change the people, but more importantly, something that's never been looked at for finance transformation, and it's happening today, it's changed the way you look at data. So it's bringing people, process, technology, and data together. And any one of the combinations of those four areas is what a transformation is in finance. Basically changing any one of those four areas. So let me give you a couple of examples. A couple of examples that I've worked on as part of one of finance transformations recently is, I'll talk about what I did at Loblaw. So many of you guys know about Loblaw's, largest Canadian retailer. About 5 years ago, I did a finance transformation at Loblaw, and the number one problem that Loblaw was having was they got 1,400 stores throughout all of Canada, and each one of the store managers couldn't tell you at the end of the day how well their store did. They couldn't tell you what was the profitability that I had for groceries by the end of the day. So the CEO, Galen Weston, and the CFO said, we need to change the way in which we evaluate our stores, but how are we going to do that? We don't have the technology. We don't have access to that type of data to tell me what my revenue, what my margins are going to be. So from a finance transformation perspective, what we did was we took a new technology. It was actually SAP. And we took that technology, and you guys are going to learn about this, whether it's in high school or university, but we took that technology to change the way in which inventory within each store was calculated. So we took all the sales data that comes in from the register, we leveraged SAP to recalculate the value of that inventory. I won't go too deep, but by recalculating the value of that inventory, the store managers at the end of the day were able to run their P&L, their profit and loss, and say, here's how well I did on produce. because I used the technology and I changed the process of how I calculated my inventory throughout the day. So that was a finance transformation. Sorry, you guys still there?
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah,
sorry.
I think that's a great example. And as we think about finance professionals, it's a good example of it's not just here are what your results are at the end of the month. It's really empowering people with the great data we have now that we have the new technologies to provide more real-time insights that you can take and make actions on a real-time basis rather than just saying this is what happened. We can start using these tools to kind of predict what's going to happen and really advance the way we think about the modern finance professional.
Yep, that's excellent, Adam. Thank you. So bringing it back to finance transformation, we brought together changes in the way people were able to do their jobs, so store managers. We brought together a new way of looking at data, real time, using a newer technology, not an old, basically computer system. So that's what we did at Loblaw as part of a finance transformation. Another good example is that what we're doing at TD Bank. So Adam and I are working together at TD. We have a lot of problems in finance, right? So if our CFO thinks about, some of the issues we have in finance, we have about 2,000 to 3,000 finance professionals at TD Bank. A lot of strong, CAs, CPAs that are spending a lot of their time taking Excel documents and all the data in Excel documents and reconciling it to another Excel document so that they can try to give the right advice to branch managers or commercial bankers or investment bankers. It's a problem, right? So when we talked about some of the problems we're trying to solve in finance transformation, one of the key problems is how do you take all the messy data in large organizations, take it very quickly and give the right advice? So as part of our finance transformation at TD, we're investing in a new technology. It's a cloud technology. So this is where we think about modernizing using modern technologies. So we're taking a big platform, we're putting it into the cloud. So we can take a lot of our data at the bank, all the transactions that happen on a daily basis through millions and millions of customers. We can put it into the cloud. We can process that data and run reports real time. So we can give those reports and put them into a dashboard or a presentation to have a meaningful conversation with the branch manager on the same day. So as part of that finance transformation, we took new technology in the cloud. We made people's jobs a lot easier because they're not spending hours going into Excel. And we're making use of the data that we have available and streamlining it a lot better to provide advice to other folks in the business. Now, when you think about that example, where the modernization technology comes into play is cloud technology. And I'm going to throw out a term here. So, blockchain is very popular these days. If you think about blockchain technology, we're using a similar concept at TD, where we're taking blocks of data and we're stringing it together, and we call it out as a distributed ledger. It's a fancy term, but basically it strings together all the data. You can tag it at certain levels. And when you make it into a distributed ledger, it's available to everyone in the finance organization. So multiple users can have access to that data at the same time, and you're working off the same data. So you can have a finance manager in Vancouver, you can have an investment banker trader, part of finance, out in Singapore, all working off the same distributed ledger because we've tagged the data at the same time and we've given it access to multiple people. So now we're all speaking the same language when it comes to our finance data. And that's another way of thinking through a transformation, using new technology, new processes to make people's lives easier. So I'm going to move on to the third topic, and we've touched on it a little bit earlier. But when you think about a CFO and a modern CFO, what do CFOs want today versus what they want in the future? You know, in many of my conversations, even with our CFO at the bank, the number one thing that many CFOs are worried about is that the game has changed significantly when it comes to finance and finance's role in a large organization. And finance can really step up the game by giving that advice to the other parts of the organization based on new technology and very simply getting access to data within any company faster and making use of that data and saying, here are the trends that you want to see, and here's what you need to invest in, as an example. So the game has changed because there's new technology. Access to information is getting way faster. And it's all about predictive analytics or predictive forecasting. And that's really important when we think about finance in the future, using new tools, using new ways of getting that information, such as automation. And so on that note, the fourth topic is, how do we think about modernizing reporting and analytics? And that's where Adam comes in. I'll tell you, Adam's made a career out of this. He's one of our rock stars within TD because he has access to the latest innovations around the latest reporting tools that are out there and how to take those reporting tools and connect it to all of our clunky data sources within the bank. But people don't have to wait hours anymore based on some of the tools that Adam's provided and some of the ways in which he's given them access to that data. So on that note, Adam, do you want to spend a few minutes and maybe give everyone an understanding of what I mean by that through a demo?
Sure, absolutely. So I think Neil touched on a lot of great points so far. Like when we think about modern finance, the term big data gets thrown around a lot because all these organizations have a lot of data, and TD has a lot of data that we can use. But really, when we think about big data, it's how do we make that big data small using the tools that we have? Because when we have a ton of millions and millions of rows of transactions, we really only want to know about the rows that we want to analyze. So it's about, we have this large amount of data and finding the small insights in that data that can make our businesses run more effective and provide more support to our business partners. So when we think about how traditional finance worked, and even how finance worked when I joined TD 8 years ago, we would gather data from a bunch of different places. We would then work in Excel to, maybe we would use VBA to try and reorganize that data. And then we're gonna prepare that into a PowerPoint presentation. We're then gonna send a bunch of different reports to results to our business partners. And then in that meeting, they're gonna ask questions to us. And then we're probably gonna have to go back to Excel, reanalyze that data, and the cycle kind of starts again on a monthly process. Now in a more modern finance organization, and what we have worked hard to change at TD, is we still have to go ahead and get that data, but we're gonna use modern tools like Alteryx. Alteryx is a ETL tool, which stands for extract, transform, and load. And what that's gonna do is allow us to make dynamic transformations in our data directly in the tool. Now within a tool like Alteryx, you can use predictive analytics. You can use features like R and Python to really develop new insights in that data that you couldn't previously do in Excel. And now that you have your finance professionals working these applications, we don't just say at the end of a month, here is a PowerPoint deck with this presentation. We want to encourage self-serve reporting and dynamic reporting for either the CFOs or the different businesses that we support. And one of the most important tools we use at TD to do that is So in just a second, I'm going to show you, it doesn't have real data in it. I put in some find NHL data, but this is the dashboard that we use with our business partners to really try and identify insights for expenses on a monthly basis. Now, before I go into that, just want to give a brief description about Alteryx. So Alteryx is a lower code tool. It does give you the ability to use predictive analytics and R and Python. Don't want to do a demo of Alteryx in here because the tool's really powerful, but on a screen perspective, it's a bunch of different boxes that can show a lot of different functionality. But I would definitely encourage you to explore some of these more modern tools. When we think about a finance professional, traditionally they were really good at knowing numbers. There's definitely a difference between being good with numbers and being good with data. And I think the lines between understanding both are really important as we look at the future finance employees. So what I'm showing you now on the screen is one of the newer reports that we deliver to our business partners. And for this, we're using Tableau. So Tableau is a data exploration and visualization tool. So instead of giving and emailing a report to each of our commercial branch leaders in business banking on a monthly basis, we're actually going to give them a dashboard that's going to encourage them to find insights in the data themselves. Now we can see that the dashboard shows them their initial results, their contribution to profit, loan, deposits, and their expenses. Now looking at this dashboard, we can easily see that we do have a big problem. I'm just going to have to do a refresh. We do see that there's a big variance when it comes to our expenses. We have we're negative $955,000 to plan. So what, instead of going into a meeting and saying, we have $955,000 variance to plan, we can encourage our business partners to explore this data themselves. So now jumping into the expense tab to try and find this variance a little further. I can go into another dashboard and see that there's a variance in my general and other expenses to plan of $998,000. So now I'm now going to give my business partners a dynamic experience to now explore the data themselves. It's going to take a second to load. And so as I click on this general and other expenses, it's going to update my detailed level expenses. And I can see that under this category of discretionary expenses, there's $1 million charge. But the insights don't actually stop there because I want to better understand what this expense was and give my business partners to really explore that ability. So I'm actually going to go ahead and interact with this dashboard again and click on discretionary other expenses. And that's going to give me the detailed line level information to show me that, in this case, Brad Marchand bought $1 million worth of candy. And so with this dashboard, I'm now able to, instead of previously showing one high level information, in this data set, there'll be hundreds of thousands of rows of information, but I can build a dashboard to really allow my partners to gain those insights and investigate those types of variances. So now I can go ahead and make sure that this type of transaction doesn't happen again or take meaningful action around that. So this is a quick example of how we're using visualization and some of our modern tools to provide better support to the business partners and the CFOs that we need to as a modern finance professional. And Neil, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Adam. That was excellent. So listen, when we talked about what finance transformation and what CFOs are looking for, CFOs are looking to drive value and make sure that all the finance professionals are providing advice to their business partners, right? What you just saw right now was something that used to take days for a six-figure salary employee to pull together now takes minutes, because we're pulling information together, we're putting it together in a dashboard, And when someone's asking a question about that, you don't have to go back to a messy Excel spreadsheet. You have the answer right there as well, right? So the CFO is happy because we got a better return on investment, and we're also driving value outside of finance, and we're actually looked as advisors. So I'm not paying a six-figure salary employee to just crunch numbers. I'm actually able to give advice. So that's what you just saw right now. And then behind the scenes, if I put myself in your shoes, right? When you're thinking about a career in finance or just finance in the future, you're probably thinking, well, this is a lot different than what I think of what finance folks do in terms of, being an accountant. And I wouldn't say that's the case. I would say finance folks, we still need the accounting skills. You still need the hard technical or the hard business knowledge. But combining that with the hard technical knowledge on using some of these tools, which you can go out on YouTube and figure out how do you use Alteryx, how do you use Tableau. You can probably spend a day and teach yourself. But by virtue of doing that and combining that with business knowledge, that's what CFOs are looking for today and in the future. And it really comes down to a couple of things, right? And it's more of a call to action when you think about the next generation of finance professionals. The future finance workers will be doing new things in new ways. And that's going to make leaders in finance uncomfortable, but it's totally fine because you learn the basics of finance and management reporting, and you learn how to reskill on the fly by using new technology, new tools, understand why cloud technology is so important. And the reason why it's so important is because it gives you information a lot faster. There's a couple of predictions that you should think about in the future as well. The first prediction is that transactions that happen in any organization, whether it's Loblaws and retail transactions or TD Bank and banking transactions, all those transactions will be touchless in the future. And when you think about that from a finance perspective, it's touchless transactions where it gives you access to that information in real time. The second prediction, it's around how finance information does become real time. So I predict that in the future, we're going to move away from month ends, quarter ends, which are periodic finance activities to drive decisions. And decisions are going to be real time during the day. A CFO is not going to wait for, at the end of the month of April for someone to run a P&L to tell him how good his business is doing. He's going to want that information real time on that day. And the third prediction, which should be really important to our next generation of finance, is that self-service and emerging tech and new tools will be the norm. So find out ways to reskill on the fly, learn about some of those new emerging tech and new tools, and learn how to use it. So you can be a trendsetter and get that information quicker to other business partners as well. So on that note, you heard of what finance transformation is, got a taste of what a day in the life of a finance professional looks like, and hopefully you're able to understand through the demo how important it is to get access to real-time information and make use of that information a lot better. So Jaden, I'll hand it back to you to take us from here.
Yep. So now if you guys have any questions, you can start to think of some or just unmute and ask. We'll give you some time to think. And yeah. It looks like there's a question in the chat. Neil or Adam, if you want to look at that.
Sorry, I'm just, I see them, the questions in the chat. Do I think there's a market for robo-advised investing? Oh, awesome question. I do. Generally speaking, I think there's a market for getting advice quicker, but that market's going to be, it'll get very popular when there's new finance professionals that'll know how to actually, take that robo advice to a certain level, and then be able to have the right conversation if there's a follow up with others as well. So said another way, there'll be digital workers similar to what's happening today. That's going to help, a lot of finance professionals take that information and take it to the last mile as well. I don't know, Adam, if you have anything else to add on that.
Definitely market for it. We see it already starting to pop up now, and there's firms that are either doing fully autonomous trading decisions or even just guided advice for traders who want to be able to make their decisions better. We already starting to see some momentum in that area, and I definitely think that's going to continue.
Yep. And I see another question. How do you see other traditional finance roles like investment banking and asset management changing in the future? Oh, I love that question. I actually see it changing right now. In fact, recently, a couple of weeks ago, I met with our CFO of our investment banking group at TD, and we were talking through what our data strategy would be at the bank. And the number one question he asked me was, Neil, when are we going to get access to Python? And I don't know if you guys know what Python is, but Python's it's like a coding tool that allows anyone to kind of wrangle data, blend that data together, so you can get straight to like a report. Similar to what you saw earlier in the demo. To answer your question here was, the CFO of the group was saying, I want all of my investment bankers and traders at the desk to have Python so they can use that to run real-time analytics and learn how to use that code to take information from the markets and generate it into advice that they need to give real time. And we've provided Python to a lot of the folks. And that goes back to how the role of how traditional finance is changing. And even executives are thinking about how do we give our traditional finance folks access to new tools so they can learn how to use those tools to spit out the information a lot faster. Hopefully that answered that question there.
Yeah, I think we can also look at the recent purchase that TD made. We bought an investment firm down in Chicago about a month and a half ago. And looking at the number of assets they have, they are a very lean organization with probably less employees than you would expect, because their main product is their proprietary software that helps make the fixed income decisions and purchases a lot more seamless without the same number of physical workers that would traditionally be in that type of environment. You can see the changing purchases and the market sentiment moving towards some of those more robotic or software-based decisions.
Adam, I'll let you take this question. There's a question around Python. And the short answer is yes, but you might want to provide a little bit more context, Adam, around Python.
Yeah, so yes, when we say Python, we do mean the programming language. And as you look at the modern finance professional, I'm not saying that everyone is going to need to learn how to use R or Python, but they definitely are skills that will become more important in terms of how you understand and use data to make better decisions. And I think there's a combination of professional training that can help you, whether that you want to do business and computer science in school, or there's a lot of actual free resources online now where you can be interested and get smarter with a lot of these tools that can help you be a more prominent finance professional, as well as really help you understand data a lot more and give you a leg up on some of these strictly number people that you may experience in the growing finance profession.
Yeah, and to add to that, Adam, I'm going to take another angle to this. I think it's still very important to have a fundamental understanding of finance, strategy around finance and accounting. And then you take that fundamental knowledge, whether it's through high school or university in your first job. But while doing that, adding to that skill set or your toolbox of skill sets is really important. You don't necessarily have to be a programmer, and if you want to be a programmer, it's fine. So you understand how to take data and program it and give it to, put it into a meaningful way to give advice. That's one way of looking at it. But there's another way of looking at it to understand when do you use certain different types of tools or technology, and how can you use it to improve the financial advice they can give in the future.
I have a question. As finance transformations continue to cover more and more roles of you guys, like finance professionals, for example, crunching the Excel data, would that make the occupation obsolete in the future?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? I didn't hear all of it.
Okay, so you know how you guys are automating more and more stuff with finance transformations? Could that put the job of finance professional at risk?
It's a good question. I would say yes and no. And I'm going to start off with no, because the whole theme here and what we're also being pushed to do is, as a finance professional, learn about automation. Learn either how to do automation or take that information and then learn how to give advice based on information that's automated and brought to you as well. So if you don't pick up new skills, or if you're unable to take information and actually communicate that information to others in the organization, then it's at risk for a finance professional. If as a finance professional, all you know how to do today is run a report and think about accounting rules and how does it work into a balance sheet and P&L, you need to change the way you need to change your skill set. You need to either learn how to communicate information a lot better or learn how to pull information in a lot faster. And if you do that, then the finance professional, the job's not at risk.
Can I add on to that a little bit? So I think
Sure.
The type of information you provide as a profession changes. So the example I showed is a Tableau dashboard that now gets produced on an automated basis. So as a finance professional in that group, my group was not going to answer those, why are my expenses higher this month? But what we actually found is after we released those results, we were getting more intelligent questions from our business partners that dove deeper into really using the finance knowledge and expertise that we had to provide support to our business partners. So I'm not saying we weren't providing a lot of value before, but being able to put out the same report on a monthly basis is not providing as much value as being a trusted resource in finance that can you really help me understand the concepts behind my numbers better? And that's where I think there's definitely still a role for finance professionals to play, to provide that really strong advice, understanding those financial concepts and having richer conversations with our business partners.
Okay, thanks. That makes sense.
So to kind of add on to Nathan's question, how do you guys see post-secondary programs changing and evolving to prepare workers in new finance transformation spaces? And do you guys think they can keep up with all these innovations and automations you guys are talking about?
Adam, I'll let you take a stab at that because you're closer to that space than I am, and a lot younger than I am.
So I think that universities are going to try their best to keep up. I think we can see that there's new types of programs coming out all the time that are trying to introduce the new concepts, but there is a level of, you have to invest in yourself to supplement some of that information. There is going to be a lag in where is the industry now to what is the direct curriculum that they're going to teach in these schools. I know there is a stronger focus on analytics and automation in business programs now that there wasn't even when I was in school not too long ago. But there's definitely a lag when something becomes mainstream to actually get that and incorporate that in the curriculums.
I agree with that. And although there's a lag, I have noticed actually over the last year, 2 years, a lot of post-secondary institutions, maybe at the graduate level, instead of MBAs, there are now programs around digital finance or finance innovation. And I found it very interesting because my title at the bank when I joined was AVP of Finance Innovation. And I thought it was interesting because I didn't think that many organizations really were thinking about finance that way. But then I realized very quickly that there's a lot of graduate programs at the post-secondary education that focusing on finance, cloud technology, and digital innovations. And I can see it percolating downwards, even at the undergrad level. And if I look at it from another lens, when we hire at the bank, we're hiring a lot of finance analysts from Waterloo or from other engineering programs. So we hire from the traditional business schools, but we're also hiring engineers now into finance as well, based on a lot of what you just heard. Because I think the combination of knowing finance, business, and combining that with technology knowledge, it's really important, and we're actually recruiting from the university level. So on that note, although there's a lag, I can see a lot of universities now realizing that and investing in finance and technology programs or curriculum as well.
Well, all right. If there are no more questions for now, thank you, Neil and Adam, so much today. And I do think that everyone learned a ton from you guys today. So is there anything, like any last words you guys would want to leave us with before we end off today?
Last words I would say is, keep looking at opportunities to retool yourselves, right? You don't always have to be the expert on everything from a technology perspective, but if you're looking at a career in finance, it's a blend of finance and technology experience, and just understanding the trends around cloud technology will always be a valuable asset. And on that note, if you have a question, you can always find myself on LinkedIn or reach out to Jaden, and we can have a follow-on conversation if you're interested.